Hi lovelies, welcome to a new Vlogmas video. Today I am very excited to share a lot of books with you because I am recommending a lot of books to you that I would say are perfect for cozy rainy days. Whether you are in need of a very warm hug or you also want to feel a little spooked. Which I feel like is a good combination for winter. Just like in autumn, sometimes all I need is the coziest story that I can find, but also other times I like to dive into some mysteries slash horror books, so I believe there's something here for everyone. Hopefully I try to pick books from different genres and everything. Of course there are a million other books that I could recommend to you, but these are just a few that came to mind, and when I say a few I mean a lot, which is why I will not be talking about the synopsis of each one of these books. I'm just gonna give you some keywords or just the feeling that they give me and why I like them. But don't worry, because as always I will be linking all the books that I talk about today in the description of this video in case you'd like to do some more research for yourself and see what all of these are about. But without any further ado, let's talk about books because there are a lot on this list. We have a lot to get through, so where shall we start? Okay, I think I'm gonna start with what is for me the most obvious choice to read during winter. I always associate these stories with this season. They feel so magical to me, but they also have a bit of a darker tone, so I feel like they are perfect for winter and I adore them so much, and that is fairy tales. Whichever fairy tales you like from all over the world, which is always such a beautiful thing to read. I do own multiple collections, so I'm going to show you a few. This one is the Hans Christian Andersen's Fairy Tales, which is so tiny and cute. Then I've got this one, which is the illustrated Grimm's Fairy Tales, which is technically for children, but you know, we are all children deep inside, so that's okay. And this one is definitely one of the most gorgeous books that I own because it has a lot of illustrations in every single chapter page and then in the middle as well. Look at that. Oh my gosh. It just takes me back to childhood all over again, you know? It's so magical. I can imagine myself being, what, 5 years old and just being fascinated by all of this imagery. It's so stunning. I absolutely adore it, and I did read all of these stories, love all of them. Of course, the majority has inspired some of my favorite Disney movies, which are basically all of them, but that's a whole other story. Another Grimm's fairy tale collection that I own is this one, which has a much darker tone to it, if you can see that, which I also absolutely love, but the illustrations are definitely creepier. Which is so funny to me. I just love them. They have a bit of a surrealistic slash absurd side even. They're so fun. I read this collection as well. Of course, a lot of the stories will be a bit repetitive if you read from the same authors, but to me they're always so much fun to read. And lastly, I also want to show you this one. This is a gorgeous collection of fairy and folk tales of Ireland, and if you know me, you know that I love everything remotely connected to Ireland and Scotland and everything Celtic, so this is perfect to me. I did get this one a long time ago when I went to Ireland. It was perfect. I did read this one as well and absolutely adored it. So of course you have a lot to choose from. Just fairy tales in general, they have a very nostalgic side to them. Hence why I feel they are such warm, cozy stories to read during winter and just go back in time or be a little spooked by a few of these stories because they can get quite dark. And since we are talking about fairy tales, I also want to recommend you one of my most recent reads, which is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. This is a short story collection which is inspired by famous fairy tales, but they have a very twisted side to them and they are quite different from the original. You can see the inspiration, but it has a whole unique perspective and it is amazing. Angela Carter's writing is just stunning. I absolutely loved this collection and I would highly recommend you to read during this season if you haven't already. And still on the topic of classics, let's mention a few more of them. First I have Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is such a perfect edition for this book. I feel like this is the Penguin Deluxe edition and It's so perfect, isn't it? It's so creepy. I read this book a long time ago and cannot even remember the story that well, but I do remember loving this book. I know that usually it has a lot of mixed reviews, which I can completely get why, but I am really looking forward to rereading this one, which might be happening sooner than later. You'll be seeing a bit more about that soon-ish. But yes, I'm just looking forward to going back to this world again, into this very messed up characters. It's one of those stories that just feels cold. It feels windy and rainy at the same time, and so devastating on one hand, but also a bit twisted on the other. So give it a try if you haven't already, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this one actually, because usually people either love it or hate it. And then, of course, I do have to recommend a Jane Austen book for this video because, yes. So we have Northanger Abbey, and this is such a funny book. I love that we get to have a novel in which Jane Austen really uses all of her sense of humor with these characters and this plot. This is basically her making fun of Gothic novels, which is also so much fun because I love Gothic novels. I love how atmospheric and also dramatic they can be. But then you get this masterpiece. You get Jane Austen, an amazing author, making fun of some of my favorite tropes, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I'm also planning to reread this one soon. This was actually a very recent gift from my friend Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe, and I will be doing an exclusive reading vlog for this book, which is very exciting. I cannot wait. Now, it is Christmas time after all, and that means usually you get to have some Christmas holidays. Maybe you have some more free time, or at least more time to read than you usually would have. So could I recommend to you a big classic? An amazing classic, which you will only probably appreciate even more once you finish it. At least that's what happened with me, and I have been talking quite a lot about this book recently, but I just need to do it again, and that's Middlemarch by George Eliot. This is a stunning character study, and just again, once I finished it, I didn't even realize how great of a book this was. But as time went by, I just kept thinking about this book for so long, and that's when I realized, you know, this was amazing. This was incredible. These characters feel so real to me, and this place as well. I also love the subtitle of this novel because it almost says exactly why I adore this book so much. Let me read the exact words. Exactly. Middlemarch, a study of provincial life. That's exactly what this book is. It is very slow. It takes time to build up the story and get to know these characters, and you will not find any major plot twist here or anything. That's really not the point. It's really about flawed people making mistakes and learning from them, and sometimes you can even judge them a little bit as the reader, but then you put yourself into their situation and you think, I would probably have done the same, because we're all humans. We all keep making mistakes, which is part of life, and that's how we evolve as well. So it's amazing, it's so good, and I'm so glad I finally read it this year. I know it looks intimidating. Listen, I know. It is indeed a very big book, but if you take it slowly, if you don't rush into it, because that's also not the point, it is a very slow book. It's very cozy as well, because you get to spend so much time in this place with these characters, you will never want to come back. It's incredible. So just take your time, read a few chapters a day, maybe even just one chapter. That's completely okay. Just take your time. You know, it's a beautiful story, so just appreciate it and love it, hopefully. And now let's all take a moment to realize how wonderful both children's books and middle grade can be. They're magical, they're whimsical, and they teach you so much. Usually, I don't think children's books are really for children. They're just there to remind us to never grow up, basically, and just keep that naive and innocent side always with us, which is something that I absolutely adore. So let's talk about a few of those books. First, let's talk about the children's book that I feel like everyone should read. You probably have heard about it already. It is a lot of people's favorite, but I need to include it here, and that's The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. This was actually a beautiful gift from one of my patrons, which was so sweet. But yes, this is one of those books that everyone needs to read in their lifetime. It's beautiful, it is emotional, it has a bit of a sad twist as well. it will make you smile so much and also cry a lot. But it has this big life lesson in such a teeny tiny book. How's that possible? I don't know. With such a simple premise that doesn't seem to really go anywhere, suddenly you have this magical story about what it means to love someone, be there for someone, be friends with someone, and really caring about what's important in life. There's this very famous quote, I don't know the exact words, also because it depends on the translation of course, but it tells you that what's meaningful, it's invisible to the eye, and that's so true. What truly matters in life, you will only be able to see with your heart, and it's just I always get emotional when I talk about this book. I read it years ago and I've already reread it. I believe it was like 2 or 3 times, but I really do want to reread this eventually, and it's a story that will always have a massive impact on me. I remember reading it for the first time when I was very young, and I didn't really get it at the time because I think I was I like 7 years old or something, and I didn't fully grasp its meaning, but then I read it a couple of years later maybe, and it just completely changed my life. So that's The Little Prince. Another one that has an equally impactful message, I would say, but it does it with only a couple of sentences and some illustrations. It is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy or Mackesy, I'm never sure, but this is just, I know it will not be for everyone. A lot of people find this a bit cheesy, which I get. I get where you're coming from, but I don't agree. This is one of those books that I feel like is perfect if you have kids in your life, for instance. It is perfect for you to read with them and you will both learn something. Even if it doesn't tell you anything new exactly, I think everything that's written here are things that we are all aware about, but we often just forget because of how rushed life can be. We are always in such a hurry that we don't really pause to do an emotional check-in and reflect on what's been bothering us maybe, or what's been missing maybe, and it's just, this book is a wonderful reminder of that, for you to just be kind to yourself and take that break, which is so much needed sometimes, and not feel guilty about it, because life is so short and it is these little moments that you need to appreciate and be there for. So it's wonderful. I'm gonna give you a few sneak peeks into the beautiful pages. They're all gorgeous. I can just open it anywhere and you will get a beautiful message with a stunning illustration. It is such an innocent book as well. And it just, oh, it warms my heart. It really does. I would compare this one a little bit to Winnie the Pooh, also because it has lots of animals and this cute little place where you also learn so much, and it has that type of setting and message and tone. So if you enjoy stories like Winnie the Pooh, you probably will enjoy this one. It is so lovely. A few more of my absolute favorite children's classics. We first have A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. It has one of my favorite protagonists of all time, who is Sarah. She's a kid who goes through some very traumatic events in her life very early on, and she is almost forced to live with this very unkind people to her, and it is about how not only resilient she is, but most of all how kind she is to those people nonetheless, and how patient, generous, lovable, and just a good friend she is despite all the awful circumstances around her, which only shows you that love is the answer, you know, which again, I know this sounds like such a cliche, but people need to be reminded more often that kindness and love and gratitude are some very, very important aspects of life, and I think Sarah shows that so well and in such a heartwarming way. This book is one of those that I would recommend you to read during a very cold day where you just want to grab a hot cup of tea and read by the fireplace. It's that type of feeling that this book gives me, despite its very sad undertone sometimes, but that's also the feeling that I get when I'm reading Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Of course I needed to include this one. This is the stunning movie edition. It's the book that they show in the most recent adaptation, and it was a gift from my friend Sarah from Sarah the Dreamer. I am so thankful. Look at it. I could go on a full hour just talking about this book and this story, but it is about, again, just family, friendship, love, sisterhood, and most of all, it is such a beautiful take on feminism and how it can take so many different forms, no matter what your dreams are, what your goals are in life. They are all valid, no matter how different they can be. And I adore how this book celebrates that. No matter what your dreams look like, if you'd like to be a writer, a painter, a musician, a lawyer, a stay-home mom, that doesn't matter. It's all valid, and you should celebrate that. You should be proud of that, be proud of who you are, and work hard to get it, and passionately as well. And I just adore that. While we also have this beautiful sister relationship with their mom and everything, it's just, it celebrates the power of not only women but also just relationships and togetherness as well. And I love it so much. Also, look at this, it has a few pictures from the movie. How pretty is that? As for middle grades, we have first the Pages & Co series by Anna James. This is the first book, which is Tilly and the Book Wanderers, which is about Tilly, a girl that lives with her grandparents, and she is able to travel between books and meet some of her favorite characters. And doesn't that sound like a dream? With this series, as you can imagine, you go on this magical adventure and meet tons of different characters. I've also read the second book, which is much more dedicated to fairy tales characters. Not only does it celebrate family as well, which is, I think you can already tell, it is a theme that I adore so much, because it does explore the relationship between Tilly and her grandparents, which is so wonderful, but it also talks about the power of stories and how they can make you dream and fly and conquer your fears as well. It is just so lovely. Then we have, I of course need to mention this book. It did inspire one of my all-time favorite movies from Studio Ghibli. It is, again, just one of the most whimsical stories, which I know will not be for everyone, because it doesn't always give you answers as to what is happening and why it's happening. And maybe you can already tell what it is, but that's Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne-Jones. Yes. I mean, a magical walking / flying castle with funny, quirky characters. Just take me there, please. Oh, it's starting to rain right now. Oh, perfect for this video. I'm so happy. I don't think you can listen to that, but oh, it's magical. Anyhow, like I was saying, I would highly recommend you to either read the book or watch the movie, or both, of course, but I do slightly prefer the movie a little bit. Maybe that's because it was my first contact with the story, and also because honestly everything that Studio Ghibli touches is perfection. So, but anyhow, if you are looking for a quirky, nonsensical fantasy book, this is it for you, while also having a very strong female character. It's just, yes. Speaking of adventurous fantasy books with amazing characters, we also have, of course, Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This is the first book of the Morgan Crow series, which I've also read the second one, and I do own the third one, which I still need to read. I am hoping to reread the first two books eventually and then get to the third one, but this is about the story of Morgan Crow, who is cursed to die on her birthday. But when the day comes, this very mysterious man called Jupiter North takes her to the magical and mysterious land of Nevermore. And what happens there, I cannot tell you. But it also involves places that just come to life, and I love that trope when the buildings and the places itself have a personality as well. Just, I adore it so much. We have talking cats. Jupiter North is such an extraordinary character. I adore him to pieces. If you're looking to go in a big journey with some very mysterious components as well, then this is perfect. It gives me very nostalgic feelings, even though obviously this is a very recent release, but it feels like I've known this story for a while. So it seems like these people are my friends, which they are. They don't know about it, but they are. Do you know where else I also have tons of friends? They don't know about it, but we are best friends. And that's in Middle-earth. Of course it is. The Hobbit by J.R. Tolkien. It's the perfect cozy book. This was written for children. It does approach some very serious topics as well, because Tolkien manages to do that in such a wholesome way that also breaks your heart sometimes. But we have Mr. Bilbo Baggins. Look at him. I adore him. We have him going on this lovely journey that he never expected to go in with dwarves and wizards, because of course, why wouldn't you? This is such a wholesome book. I cannot, all the words that I could use to describe it would not be enough. I completely fell in love with this series since last year when I started getting into the Lord of the Rings finally. This was the first book that I read in this world, and I do not regret it. If you are also looking to maybe read the Lord of the Rings for the first time, I would say going with the Hobbit first is a great choice, because it's definitely less intimidating. You have a lot less information, I would say, and a lot less going on, so it's a good first step into this beautiful world. Plus, Bilbo is such a charismatic character, I would say, even though he doesn't seem to be, at least in the first pages, I would say. The more I think about this book, the more I fall in love with it, the more I love these characters, the more I love this world. I've talked enough about this book and the Lord of the Rings. I mean, is it ever enough? I'm not sure, but if you've been here for a while, you already know I love this series, I love this world, and of course I needed to recommend it for this video because it is the embodiment of coziness during a rainy day. You just wander through Middle-earth and fight the evil. And it's wonderful because you get to spend time just dancing and singing and eating a lot with these characters, and just, I love them. Also, look at this edition. My best friend gifted it to me, and of course I fell in love. I cried when I got it because it's too much. It's too much. It's so pretty. I love it. Oh, I love this one too. Look at it. Look at all of them. Eating, of course. I love all the details. Look at how stunning it is. I love it. We're not done talking about Tolkien just yet, because I need to recommend some very specific books for Christmas. And first I have Letters from Father Christmas by J.R. Tolkien. Not enough people know about this book. It is precious because it's a collection of letters that J.R. Tolkien wrote himself pretending to be Santa, and he sent them to his kids for years. He pretended to be Santa and to work in the North Pole. He invented other characters as well, and a specific calligraphy for each one of them, because of course he did. Of course he did. And you even get to see the original letters in the book. How amazing is that? It always manages to make me cry. I reread it every single year. It is one of those mandatory reads in December for me. But this book just captures so much. The entire childhood of all his kids. You know, from the moment that they believe in Santa and they're still asking for some gifts and everything, to that moment where they slowly start realizing that Santa is not in fact real, only in their hearts, but you get to see that transition as well. And it's a little sad, but the way Tolkien handles that as well, it's so cute. I adore it so much, and it is just the perfect read for December. If you've never read this one, I couldn't recommend it enough, honestly. Let me show you another example because I think it's too precious not to show you. Look at that. We have the polar bear, the Santa's elves, of course, and then all these gorgeous illustrations that he also did. Just, I don't know how he managed to do all of this. It's just incredible. Look at this one. Oh my god. He really did everything he could to keep the Christmas spirit and Christmas magic for as long as he could for his children. And that's one of the most beautiful things in the world, I think. So that's Letters from Father Christmas. Please read it. Then of course another obvious one, but I need to include it because it's also an annual reread for me, and that's of course A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I always reread this one and rewatch all the movie adaptations. Well, if not all of them, at least a lot of them, because they're all beautiful. I adore all the adaptations of this story. And I don't think this story will ever be forgotten. Hopefully it will, you know, go on for generations and generations in the future. At least I hope so, because it is once again one of those teeny tiny books that packs so much in it. And I feel like, yes, it might have an obvious message to pass, but it is important nonetheless, and it should be always present, I feel like. So it's amazing, one of my all-time favorites, because of course it is, of course it is. And then for this very Christmassy pile, I have another one that I still haven't read, but I am planning to very soon because I'm doing a bit of a Christmassy reading vlog, and this one is on my reading plans because it is the Penguin Book of Christmas Stories. This is a collection of Christmas stories from all over the world, which is so wonderful. I believe it focuses more on classic Christmas stories, but it has a few more modern ones as well, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. I'm just so happy to have this and to read it sooner than later, hopefully. Okay, now I thought I'd also mention Hunted by Megan Spooner, which is a little random because I read this ages ago and remember enjoying it at the time. I'm not sure exactly how I would feel about this if I read it now, but I'm gonna recommend it nonetheless because, first of all, it is definitely a wintry read. We have snow all around, it's just stunning. I love the art style, and it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And what I remember enjoying about this one is that it maintains enough elements of the original tale, but gives it a new look and a new twist that I really enjoyed at the time. I think it's entertaining. I wouldn't say it's surprising necessarily, but it's a very short, easy read, and I would say it is engaging. I thought it was a little predictable, but at the same time it didn't go the easy way out, you know what I mean? So I would still recommend this one, even though I'm not so sure if I would enjoy it as much if I read it now. However, I am still intrigued by this author's other book, which is it Sherwood? Something like that? I believe it is a Robin Hood retelling or something, and I do want to read that one as well. So that's Hunted. If you're looking for some mysteries slash more horrific stories this winter, possibly, then first of all I would like to recommend these two mystery novels, which are also considered to be historical fiction, I would say, and that's these two. We have The Wonder by Emma Donoghue and The Fondling by Stacey Halls. I'm pairing these two together because I feel like they are both mysterious novels. They both have that intriguing component where something does not feel right, and I would say they are both very captivating from the start. They do a great job setting up this very not so comfortable setting and telling you that things are not what they seemed to be. So the premise itself is not safe because something suddenly changes the entire plot right at the start and catches you by surprise, I would say. So they do both have that in common, even though they are quite different stories, but I think they do a great job in their genre. I did enjoy The Wonder a bit more than The Foundling, just because I thought the descriptions of each scene were more gripping and they kept you guessing all the time, but they are both quite good and I enjoyed both of these. So if you're looking for some darker stories, perhaps these are a good choice. But if you want to be a little more spooked than that and don't mind a bit of gore as well, then I have two manga recommendations for you, which is a genre that I really want to get more into. So if you have any recommendations at all, please let me know. I'm still not sure exactly what my taste in manga is, so just recommend me anything. I also love anime so much and I will watch horror, romances, coming of age, or just those very slow lifestyle manga slash anime. So if you have any recommendations at all, I would love to hear them. But for this specific video, I have these two, which are Death Note and Tokyo Ghoul. Now I have a complicated relationship with both of these actually. And that's because with Death Note, I would consider it one of my favorite series of all time if it wasn't for the terrible ending. Just the terrible ending, in my opinion. I think they didn't know what to do with the story anymore and it just completely fell down a hill. I did only watch the anime. I'm not sure if the manga is the same. I will still read the entire thing because I'm curious and I do still love the series. I think up to the halfway point and a little bit after that, it is just incredible. It's one of the best series I've ever seen slash read. But the ending just ruined it a little bit for me. And with Tokyo Ghoul is the other way around. I wasn't a big fan of the start of the series. I didn't think it was as good as I was hoping, or at least as intriguing as I thought it would be. Now, to be fair, I've only read... wait. I've read 3 volumes of Tokyo Ghoul, and I haven't watched pretty much anything of the anime. I must have watched 2 episodes or something, but decided to try and read the manga first. So I read the first 3 volumes, wasn't the biggest fan of the first 2, but the third one was quite good, and now I really want to keep up with the series. So I would still recommend both of these, even though I do think they have some flaws that might take you out of the story a little bit and might discourage you to read them, but I would say just give them a try, see if they are for you. And especially with Tokyo Ghoul, if you don't enjoy the beginning like me, then give it some more time, you know, because I do think the story gets better. And with Death Note, well, if you don't like the ending either, then I'm sorry. But I do think these are both amazing stories to read in this season. They are very gory, so be aware of that, but overall I think they are quite enjoyable if you are looking for some more horror stories in winter. And since we are talking about horror after all, of course I need to mention Stephen King, and more specifically Misery, because I feel like it is one of his books that everyone pretty much associates with winter. I feel like I don't even have to tell you why, just look at this cover. It does have a very wintry setting. Also, in my opinion, it has one of the best well-characterized villains ever written about, I think. But also Kathy Bates in the movie, she's an incredible actress, and she portrayed Annie so well. Again, the story does get a little gory, and I would say it is more on the horror side than the mystery side, especially when it comes to psychological horror. But if that's your kind of thing, then give it a go. Now, just like I did with fairy tales in general, I'm also going to recommend you reading poetry in general during winter, because I feel like it's always able to warm your heart in the coldest days. And of course, just read any poetry you prefer. I'm gonna show you some editions and also recommend you some authors. But the first editions that I want to show you are these 2. These are some of the most recent ones that I read. The first one is this stunning Irish poetry collection. Can you just look at that? So stunning, I love it. And then I also have this one, which is the Golden Treasury. It is a compilation by Frances Turner Palgrave, and it has a bunch of romantic authors actually, which is one of my favorite periods in history. So this collection for me was perfect, and I was able to learn about so many new authors to me, and also just recognize a few names but didn't know they wrote poetry actually. So I would recommend maybe you read a more general collection like this one, so you get to find some new authors to love. But yes, I loved both of these for different reasons, but they just spoke to my soul, which I feel like poetry does a lot, and I do miss reading it more frequently, so I'm gonna try to do that next year maybe. But then, if you are perhaps looking to get into some Portuguese literature, then might I recommend you these 3 incredible authors who write some of my favorite poetry in the world. And we have Alexandre O'Neill. Oh, these are so heavy. Alexandre O'Neill, there you go. Then Fernando Pessoa, who is just one of my all-time favorite authors, period. This is actually not a poetry collection. This is the Book of Disquiet, or O Livro do Desassossego, which is also one of my favorite books, but Fernando Pessoa is mostly known for his poetry, and there's a lot you can choose from, so that's Fernando Pessoa. And then finally we have the wonderful Sofia de Mello Reiner Anderson, who actually also has a Christmas story featured in the Penguin Book of Christmas Stories that I just showed you, which is just amazing. But yes, this is one of my favorite books that I own. I think it is beautiful. This one is in Portuguese, of course, but I believe the 3 of these authors have their poems translated to English and maybe other languages as well. Fernando Pessoa, at least, I'm pretty sure has his works translated into English, Spanish, and maybe French, I think. And the other 2, I'm pretty sure they have in English. for sure. So it should be fairly easy to find. I can try and look for some poetry collections in English by these authors and link it in the description of this video, of course, for you to check out if you are interested. But I would highly recommend you all of their works, especially if you are into poetry. But all of them actually also write short fiction, so if you'd like to try some Portuguese literature, these are all great choices for you to start with. We're almost at the end of the video, I promise. So the next book I want to recommend is also one that I read ages ago, and at the time oh my god, it's raining again. At the time I absolutely loved it with my entire heart. Could not stop thinking about it. I remember going to lunch with my family and just looking out the window and still be thinking about this story and these sisters, because it had such a big impact on me that I couldn't actually focusing on having lunch. It was such a strange feeling, but I love when books are able to do that to you, you know? Just take you to a completely different world or time frame and just you get lost there completely. And that for me was The Nightingale by Christine Hanna, which is set in World War II in France. We follow two sisters. Something that I really loved about this book was how it showed how strong people can be in different ways. Strength and bravery take many different forms, and just because you're not out there in the actual war fighting, it doesn't mean that you're not doing anything to help other people and fight for yourself as well. So I love how this book portrayed that. I remember there being a romantic relationship here that I was not a big fan of, so it definitely has its flaws, but overall I think it does an incredible job setting the atmosphere. I could hear and listen and smell everything. I felt that I was there with both of these girls fighting for my life and trying to survive, and it always takes me back in time, you know? Thinking about the people that actually had to go through this and people who still have to go through horrors like this one, which is devastating, obviously. And I feel like it's important to, no matter how heartbreaking it is, because it is important to not forget these stories and read about them, research about them, and don't forget the past, so we can improve for the future, hopefully, which sometimes it doesn't seem like we're doing that, but anyhow, that's The Nightingale by Christine Hanna. And the last pile for this video, we have some fantasy recommendations, of course. And because winter is coming, or winter is here already. Winter is here. What am I saying? Okay, A Game of Thrones. The first book, what's happening? Okay, A Game of Thrones, the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin, which, yes, also has its problems. I know it's not everyone's favorite, but I have to say I love it. Both the book series and the TV show series. We do not talk about the last season, that never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. It has such gripping characters and political intrigue, and once you think you know where the story is going, you are absolutely wrong. And despite still not having the last book of this series, I feel like I might reread it sooner than later. I wouldn't say next year necessarily, but soon-ish, I would say. I think George R. R. Martin does an incredible job portraying these characters. Honestly, they are such flawed people. At a certain point, you don't even know who you are rooting for anymore sometimes, but it has all the complications that come with people making the wrong decisions during the wrong time. And they do suffer with those decisions. I love how the stakes in this series are always high, especially when we are depending on trusting other people, for instance, or just trying to save everyone, and suddenly you get manipulated and everything is ruined. It's a series filled of twists and turns that you don't see coming. It's filled with intrigue and an amazing plot, amazing characters, and I love it. I know it has some problematic elements for sure, but I do still love it. So that's this one. And then of course I have to recommend The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, which, yes, is big and it is a trilogy, but these books, I swear to you, you can read 200 pages in a row without even noticing it, because it is that engaging and fast-paced and easy to read, and it is incredible. I adore this series so much, and it needs to become a video game. Please, someone work on that. But this is set in a world where the dark guys won for once, and it deals with the consequences of that. It's incredible. I also mention it quite frequently on my channel, but it does have such a wintry slash cold slash mean tone to it, because obviously since the evil is ruling this world, you keep thinking, how will these characters deal with that? How will they fight against it? And you just follow this amazing crew. I love all these people. Just like the Lord of the Rings, it is nothing like the Lord of the Rings, but you also have this little crew of people who are trying to go on this very hard mission to save the world, and everything that comes with that is a roller coaster of emotions, and I just adore it so much. I still need to read so many books by Sanderson, which I'm so excited for. I might finally start the Stormlight Archive series next year, so we'll see if that happens, but this is incredible. Okay, and very fast because my battery is flashing, but next I have a book that not everyone will like for sure, but that's Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. It's hard to talk about this one because it's very ambiguous. I do compare it a little bit with The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, so if you like that book, you probably will enjoy this one as well. They do have different stories, but the idea of not knowing exactly what's happening and not really getting any clear answers to it, that's why it reminds me a little bit of The Turn of the Screw, because I think the answers are up to you to figure out. I don't think any two people who've read this book have the same interpretation of the story, which is always interesting. I personally still struggle to talk about my feelings towards this book because I did like it, but I'm not even sure why I liked it. It's a strange experience, but overall I would still recommend it if you are curious to see what it is about, and why it seems to have so many mixed reviews. Also, the setting is incredible. I kind of picture it in a Greek museum, mainly because of the cover, of course, but it does have that very sense of wonder because you keep walking around in this labyrinth that doesn't seem to have a way out, and so in that sense it can feel a bit claustrophobic, you know. So I don't know, I think it does a good job at making you feel all these things with the main protagonist, where you feel completely lost. But yes, it will definitely not be for everyone, so this is a bit of a risky recommendation, but I will give it anyway. And finally, of course, we're going to end up with another one of my favorites, and that's Dreamer's Pool by Juliet Marillier. Any reason that I can take to talk about this woman, I will. This is the first book of the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy, and the first book and third book are some of my favorites of all time. I believe the second book is not as good, but it is still very much worth reading for you to keep up with the series and just finish it and embrace its glory. It's a very character-driven series. Juliet Marillier is often inspired by Celtic folklore and fairy tales, which is just perfect. And Blackthorn and Grimm, these characters stole my heart completely. I love them so much. Everything they go through and what they have to do to protect one another, and how at first they do not trust each other exactly because they don't know anything about each other, about each other's past, and they both start in a prison and you don't know exactly why either of them is there, but you know both of them have a very sad or dark past, and this story is about unfolding their history and seeing how they become to trust each other and become friends and figure out how to go on this very dangerous journey and face a lot of obstacles in the way, while having this big character development, which Juliet Marillier always does so well. I've also read this one, which is Daughter of the Forest by her. It is equally amazing. I do prefer Dreamer's Pool just a little bit because of the characters mainly. I love these two so much, but Daughter of the Forest I would also highly recommend. It is the first book of the Seven Waters series, which I still haven't continued, and I need to change that because I love this book so much. It is inspired by a fairy tale, again, of the seven swans, oh I can't remember now. But yes, besides having strong characters and very engaging ones, you always have this magical setting where nature comes to life, and that's just, yes. I love this woman. I want to read everything she's ever written. So Oh my gosh, this was such a long video and I apologize for that, but I was so excited to talk about all these books, and hopefully I was able to recommend you something that you haven't read and hopefully that you will love, of course. But please do let me know, 1, if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them, and 2, which books would you recommend for the wintry season or just for cozy rainy days in general. I'm always looking for recommendations, and reading your comments is one of my favorite parts of having a channel, so just let me know everything. I also hope you're doing very well. I hope you've been enjoying these videos, having a wonderful December, and as always I am sending you all the love, lots of hugs, and I will see you again, of course, very soon on my next Vlogmas video. Bye!